Hi, everybody. This is Barry Bloom. I'm a senior writer at Sportico with all my colleagues here. And I'm pleased to have an old friend of mine, Tony Clark, the executive director of Major League Baseball's Players Association, with me today. And, we'll talk about the valuations and a number of other issues. But hey, Tony, great to have you with us.
B, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So we go back a long way. I was thinking about it to the days when you were like player rep. You were player rep on the Diamondbacks. Were you a player rep elsewhere too?
I was after my second year in, became the player rep in Detroit, and then as I bounced around, my role was a little bit different thereafter, where I was fortunate enough to be voted into what was at the time the American League rep, which effectively represented the American League. That changed a couple years later and turned into association rep, which is what we have now as players changed, myself included, between leagues. So whether it was a rep or as an American League rep or as an association rep, was involved really from my second year on.
Yeah. So, you were always, because of that, you were always one of my guys who I'd sidle up to in the clubhouse and discuss labor relations and what was going on significantly with negotiations on certain collective bargaining agreements through the years. And, really, that's the way we got to know each other. But for the uninitiated, uh, uh, people don't, a lot of people I'm sure don't remember or realize that, hey, you go back, you grew up in San Diego, played your high school ball there, played college ball at San Diego State. At your age, you were like 12 years old when the Padres were in the World Series in 1984 for the first time. And then by the time they were in the second time, you were already 4 years into your baseball career playing for Detroit. I was covering the Padres in '84 for the Union Tribune, or what was the San Diego Tribune back then. It was my
Right.
first year as a full-time beat writer on that beat. What do you remember most about growing up in San Diego and how you cultivated a love for baseball?
I remember Jack Murphy Stadium. I know obviously it then changed to Qualcomm, and I think is actually torn down or in the process of being torn down.
It's gone.
Um, yeah, we didn't have much in the way of wherewithal as a family, so our opportunities to kind of get down to the ballpark were few and far between. And when we did, it was usually in the upper deck. And I just remember going to the games. I remember seeing the likes of Dave Winfield and obviously Tony Gwynn and Alan Wiggins and watching those games and dreaming from the time that I got there at the possibility of actually getting close to a player, let alone the idea of playing on the same field, which is why via interleague I actually had a chance to play there in San Diego at Jack Murphy Qualcomm at that time. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it, having grown up in San Diego and sitting up in those bleachers and then actually getting a chance on the field to play and to play against one of the guys that I idolized, and Tony Gwynn was an absolute blessing I'll never forget.
So, as a player, is there a moment that you remember, a highlight of your career that stands out more than anything else?
Well, there's a bunch. I think you never really forget uh, your first at bat and your first start. When you got the call, I'll never forget those things. Obviously, being drafted by Detroit and having an opportunity to come up and play in '95 in Detroit, having an opportunity to play for a great manager in Sparky Anderson, or you don't forget walking along the tunnel that Hank Greenberg walked along, or having an opportunity to sit down with Al Kaline that first day I came in, and getting out on the field and playing first with Lou Whitaker at second, and Alan Trammell at short, with Cecil DHing, and you don't forget that. I still can place myself there. My first first couple of at bats were had me dragging my bat back to the dugout. So as much as I try to forget those, I can't. But I remember my first hit and those first games, or first at bats and first games, in a way that will stick with me. But after that, yes, a lot of different things that happened during the course of my career: first home runs, first playoff games. The double that I hit in Boston, bouncing over the wall and not staying in the ballpark. Those things don't leave you either.
Yeah, I still wish that ball had stayed in the ballpark.
I hear you. Are just gone out completely. That wouldn't have been a bad thing either.
No, you guys would have won the series if that happened.
Yeah,
And that
agreed.
was when you were with the Yankees. So it all, I would think, all the experiences, you probably became obviously very, you had to have a penchant for being aware of what was going on around you, and an opinion to get involved with the union situation back then, even as a player. So as you move forward here, how much of it cultivates where you are right now as we're going into new collective bargaining for a new contract this year? And where do you see the game? You look at it, we've been through 2 years of a pandemic, one, no fans in the stands, another limited. There's been a lot of lost revenue. Players have lost, I think, 67% of their salary last year, and overall their salaries have gone down about 6%. But the valuations of the teams seem to continue to increase, as our guys at Sportico have proven with our first baseball valuations or valuations. What do you think about the health of the game right now?
So you wrapped in a number of questions in that in that question. I'll work to go through each of them. I'll work to go through each of them. My perspective is shaped based on my experiences, those that helped develop in me as a ball player, as a young man, those that I leaned on when I first came into the league, that taught me about the game and the industry, the responsibility that I believe I have and had as an active player, to leave the game better for those that came behind me. It's why I got involved, particularly once I understood and appreciated the reason that I even had the opportunity as a Black player to play. All of those things helped shape my understanding for the game, my respect for the game, my love for the game, and my desire to protect and advance the game and the interests of our fraternity. Which brings us to the second or third moving pieces of your question. Obviously, the last couple of years have been unprecedented in a lot of different ways, but largely because of the pandemic. You highlighted franchise values, and when you look at and think about the game's future, where it's at and where it's going, I do believe that it is bright. I do believe that the industry is fine from a business standpoint. Again, Sportico's valuations as a testament to that. Having said that, I also believe that along with those valuations and along with how the industry is currently situated, there are opportunities for tangible growth. But it's going to require the industry to really look in the mirror in order to assess how the changes we've seen over the last 6, 7, maybe call it 10 years are changing the game on the field, and how the climate that has been created of late, particularly over the last 6 or 7 years, is one that is truly commoditized and attempted to dehumanize the players that are the backbone of the industry. So looking at those things and how it has affected the game, both on and off the field, is going to be important. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity here. One, because of our history and because of and I'm a bit of a romantic, the game itself. But with all the advances in tech and otherwise, there are opportunities that we can tap into to help grow the game and move it forward in a positive fashion.
So how do you think this all affects the collective bargaining? And it's my understanding that you had a first kind of perfunctory session earlier in the week, or this would be last week, but at this point, and I'm assuming that was a get to know you session, mostly among the lawyers. But how would you characterize it, and how do you characterize it moving forward?
Well, the first session is often what the first session always is, which is a reflection of each side's view of the industry, where it's at, what the challenges and issues are, and things that any one side may think need to be addressed moving forward. So our session this past week or so ago tracked that dynamic. And what it's going to lend itself to is a number of meetings moving forward, formal and otherwise, where we make proposals. The league will make proposals. Our proposals will reflect the challenges that we believe we see and the opportunities that we believe exist in some of the changes that we're going to propose and interests that we have, such that we all benefit. But that'll be the process here over the next X number of months, all with an eye on coming into an agreement before or by December 1st.
So what do you think happens if there's not an agreement by December 1st?
Well, there's a few different things that happen if there's not an agreement by December 1st. And that is both sides potentially agree to extend the deadline as a result of the progress that has been made. There's also a possibility of a work stoppage, meaning a likelihood that against the backdrop of progress not being made, the league decides to shut the doors and lock us out. But that's way down the road. Those are always possibilities anytime there's an expiration of an agreement. But at this point in time, we are focused in and have a goal of yes, making changes, but doing so against the backdrop of finding common ground and moving the industry forward as a result.
Okay, so here's another multiple question for you. I know that there are issues and there are concerns among the players about competitive balance and teams remaining competitive, wanting to compete in the market for free agents and the like, just to be in the race and not just shoot for a draft pick at the end of the year, which is no guarantee anyway. And then secondly, there's compensation, particularly the scale for younger players, and how when your predecessor, who's going into the Hall of Fame, Marvin Miller, when this all started, the way they set up the system, the whole system was a little bit different. And now because of analytics and the way general managers and owners view this, they want to pay younger players rather than older players now. And the compensation system really gives them a lot of control in the early going of their careers. So among those issues and more, what do you think the most important ones are for your cohort at this point?
Well, you just rattled them off. We've been pretty consistent in the trends that we're seeing and the reorientation of the market-based system that is worthy of discussion. So our priorities haven't changed. Incentivizing compensation and the system as a whole is a big one, and you highlighted that. Bringing earlier player compensation more in line with the value those players are creating. That's one of the things that you highlighted. That hasn't changed, and we've been consistent in that. And bringing a higher level of integrity to our service time based system. Those are the big moving pieces. And there's a number of different ways to do that within the system. So the system itself doesn't need to change. But as a result of, you mentioned analytics. Analytics have been here forever. So it's I know it's become more of the headline of late. But your second piece is the piece that is affecting how the system is responding to them, meaning the groupthink among the 30 clubs and how they are collectively looking at players suggests a dramatic shift, and one that we believe requires a conversation about those moving pieces that I just highlighted and that you mentioned, to again move the market-based system forward, reflective of the trends we're seeing in the game.
When you mentioned the service time issue, what's your idea of how to fix a system where, look, you filed a grievance with the Cubs against baseball and the Cubs for the way they held Chris Bryant down in the minor leagues. You know, there's a president of the Seattle Mariners who just talked surreptitiously, but was caught on tape about what a great idea that is to hold players down in the minor leagues, to hold back their service time, and he wound up losing his job. Is there a way to fix this so that teams have an incentive to do what, say, like the Padres did with Fernando Tatis? You know, they thought he was ready, and they weren't going to hold him back. They went for it, and they brought him up 2 years ago out of spring training when everybody thought they might hold him back for like two months to reserve his service time. And then on top of it, then they just bought him out of his free agency with their biggest contract in history, $340 million. So what do you think needs to be done to fix this?
Well, let me start from the back and work forward. The idea that San Diego had a player in Tatis that they believe could help them win ball games now should be the norm and not the exception. There are a number of things that we are going to talk to the league about regarding service time manipulation, but most fundamentally, in a world where your ability to move throughout the service time spectrum is entirely based on your days of service, the manipulation of that service is borderline criminal, particularly when you take into account what is an average major league career. If you're fortunate enough to get to the big leagues, you're on average going to stick around about 4 years. There are ways to address it without changing the system. But rather than get into them here, we'll simply tell you that I don't believe we can continue to function as an industry in a world where fans are questioning whether the best players are on the field all the time. Understand the business decision that teams appear to be making, but the climate that we are in, the options and opportunities that fans have to spend their time and their dollars, one of the things they should not be concerned about is whether or not they are seeing the best players on the field when they come to the ballpark or they tune in or stream. We just can't continue to live in that place because we believe it's damaging not just the players and their already short careers, but the industry as a whole.
So where does the face of the game come into this? I mean, we've discussed this many times on and off the record about the rule changes, speeding up the game, the shifts, whether baseball's experimenting at the minor league level this year with limiting shifts. They're experimenting with pickoff rules. They're expanding, they brought the runner on second base to the major leagues because of the pandemic and extra innings. The 3-batter rule, which they implemented, which is something the players didn't agree with. You have 7-inning doubleheaders. How much of this moves forward and how much of the game really does need to change, or are there elements from the time you played that should be returned to in a traditional sense to keep the game whole?
So a couple of things, and I'm going to try to work back to the front of your question. So, 7-inning games, men on second base, those things have been discussed against the backdrop of the climate we are in and health and safety. And what I mean by that is appreciating that we're playing ball in the middle of a pandemic and wanting to make sure that we are as effective as we can be in playing a representative game and season in a pandemic is why players were willing to consider those 7-inning doubleheaders and the man on second and extra innings. Rest assured, it's not something that I have heard from players that they hope stick around. So let me say that first with those two items, which brings me back to something, and I want to be as clear and as precise as I can be. The game of baseball isn't broken. The game of baseball, as we have always known it, is not broken. You hear a lot of people trying to tell you that all the different things that are wrong these days, and as a result need to come up with these interesting gimmicky and ways to fix it. There's nothing wrong with the game of baseball that more baseball can't fix. Now, having said that, what some have done to it and or are trying to do to it has the potential to break it. So I want to be very clear with what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. That is not to suggest that we can't think of ways on how to build on a game that I already believe, me personally, already believe is perfect. But it is to say that trying to fix something that has changed should have us thinking about how it got that way and potentially change that before changing the game itself. So again, just to be clear, the game of baseball and everything that it has always been, the game itself hasn't done anything to itself. What some are doing to it, though, has many folks not recognizing it as we always have. And as a result, conversations can and should be had. But just coming up with different rules to accommodate what is being done to it, it's a very dangerous and delicate proposition.
So specifically, what are you talking about? Things that are happening that could break the game?
Well, when you talk about what we're seeing, and I can go through all the different catchphrases and terms. You highlighted analytics early. I don't have an issue with analytics. Again, those have been around forever, but how they are being used is manifesting itself much differently. How things are being valued today and how that's manifesting in itself in our game is what is changing things. For me, again, I often ask, what is baseball? What constitutes the different aspects of our game that we all recognize as pillars of our game? And you and I mean, we could sit at a table and talk for hours about all the different nuances of the game that have always made the game of baseball as beautiful as it has always been. But after you run through all of those different things, whether it is stolen bases, whether it is hitting behind a runner, whether it is, a sac fly, run scored, RBIs, whether it is, how to break down and adjust and adapt during the course of an at bat, or, how the pitcher is pitching a particular player or team and how the pitcher is going to adapt and adjust, and all of the games inside of the games and how you position yourself on the field to adjust to them and adapt in real time. All of those things that make baseball absolutely beautiful and that I believe we should be talking more about, if they aren't as much a part of the game as they have been before, then what is it that has changed them? It's interesting. I had a prominent baseball person who will remain nameless ask me if the non-baseball people, my label, not his, should just get out of the way and whether they should just let players play. And my response was, yes, that's exactly what should happen. Provide players all the information and data that they want to provide them, and then turn us loose when the lights come on. It's in a lot of ways largely what my first hitting coach and Larry Herndon, Hondo, shout out to Hondo, told me, and that was he would provide us all the information and data we wanted before the game, and we would use it to guide our preparation on any given day against any given pitcher, against any given team, in the field, at the plate, you name it. But when the lights came on, The battle then was between us and them, me and the pitcher. He had nothing to say during the game until we proactively engaged him. After the game, though, we would take the data and we take the information and we sit down and we would assess and review and think about the adjustments we might need to make ahead of tomorrow's game. It forced us to equip ourselves, equip each other, and to think and adapt and adjust on the fly. But what it didn't do was have us in a place where the game was being dictated from on high under the guise of progress and efficiency. Even my first manager, and I mentioned him earlier in Sparky Anderson, he would often say, guys, look, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he'd say, guys, look, the first 6 innings are yours. Go get them. Go play. The last 3 innings are mine if I need to interject. Our game has always been about people. The stats, sure, great food for commentary and fodder, but the game itself has always been about people. You can't replace people, and you can't make all the people the same people. It always has been that way. It always will be that way, despite the commitment that we've seen of late to the contrary, which goes to what I said earlier about commoditizing players and dehumanizing players. So again, the game is good. The game is fantastic. What is happening to it, though, against the information that's available, despite a lot of the information being available before, has us asking a lot of questions and has us engaging in conversations that we haven't had to, because the game doesn't look the same. Our players, gifted, talented, faster, stronger. Guys are unbelievable in the skill sets that they have. Turn us loose and let us play and get a lot of the noise out of the way. And I think in a lot of ways, you'll see things start to manifest themselves differently. That doesn't just maintain our current fans, our historical fans, our longtime fans, but it, along with a number of other things, how the game is accessible, how the game is being shared, the different platforms by which you can access the game, how the game is marketed. You can do a number of other things along with it that demonstrate the beauty and sexiness of our game in a way that we simply haven't taken advantage of yet. And I would much rather we look at that and those things before you start talking about changing the game, a game that has not been and still isn't in and of itself broken since its inception 150 some odd years ago. Let's talk about those things before fundamentally changing something that will have us questioning what it is 5-10 years from now, rather than what we've known it to be. Adjust, tweaks, sure, let's talk about those, not an issue, but not fundamental changes to the game that have an opportunity to highlight big, tall, fast, short, strong, big, different skill sets in and among all those things that have always been part and parcel to what has made our game great.
Okay, so this is my assessment now. We're talking about the finances. You know, when the owners over the last year, especially last year, come to you guys and say, we're losing money and revenue this year, and we need your help to offset it. But when they sell a franchise for quadruple the amount of money that they've, it was once purchased at, as Steve Cohn did with Fred Wilpon last year when he bought the Mets, there's really no sharing in it. Is there a way, how do you look at where the players can get an equity share in all of this so that you really are partners in the situation?
Yeah, partners, that's an interesting word. We have been partners in a game and in a system that reflects all of the fine points and nuances of our game and those that play it and those that own it. We have had a pandemic. We have had a year and a half and are in the middle of a pandemic that's affected all of us above and beyond the game on a personal level as well as on a professional level. The idea that the values of the franchises continue to grow. The idea that you don't see a long line around the corner of owners who are selling their teams as a result of the challenges that have existed and manifested themselves in the last year or two suggests to me that we can continue to build the industry and the game along the lines that we've already talked about and in the same system that we currently have in place to the benefit of everyone. That in and of itself, along with conversations about how to move the game forward from a business standpoint, have us invested and have us as part of a partnership. But don't get lost, or don't have it get lost, and I know you don't, so I'm speaking to others. When you start to hear phrases like partnership, that is code for a salary cap, and that's not necessary in our business. There are ways to talk about and to tweak and adjust our market-based system to account for the differences in market size. Some of them are already in place. Others we look forward to talking about when we sit down at the bargaining table.
Before we go, the last question is, I would be remiss in not giving you a chance to talk about Marvin Miller and his impact on the game and the fact that he's going into the Hall of Fame belatedly to begin with, and now it was even delayed a year because of the cancellation of the ceremonies last year because of the pandemic.
So a couple of things there, and I appreciate you providing me an opportunity to say a few words on it. While I'm grateful and respectful for Marvin's induction, the circumstances around it, the fact that he is no longer here, and the fact that it took them as long as it did to induct him, elect him, is disappointing. We as players, we know the impact that he had, and recognize him as one of the most influential and impactful people in our industry, and that we'll always be eternally grateful for the contributions he has made. Having said that, he laid the groundwork and foundation for me and every player that has played. And I owe everything I have, everything my family has experienced to our game. And so, Marvin wanted to make sure that we as players understood what our responsibility was. We understood what our value was and is moving forward. And I, in my current position, and me as a former player, and one that, much like every player that's donned a uniform, is committed to leaving the game better than when we found it. All of that, we will be feeling and we will be thinking about as Marvin is inducted. But again, as excited as we are about the recognition, it's unfortunate that it's manifested itself in the way that it has, such that he isn't here and doesn't have an opportunity, should he have wanted it, to offer his perspective and his experiences and the history from the labor side that often gets lost among the rhetoric that is heard from management side, because the stories overlap, obviously. But the experiences and what often makes it into the mainstream is much different, and that is unfortunate.
Well, Tony, I want to thank you. I mean, as always, we could go on and on forever, usually do, but I appreciate you being with us. It was an enlightening interview, as always. Tony Clark, Executive Director of the Players Association, will be talking often as the summer goes on. This is Barry Bloom from Sportico. Thank you.
Thank you.